Before Rome bowed to the emperors, before its legions marched across the world, before the name Caesar became a title for rulers, there was a man who changed everything. Born into a city ruled by the Senate and torn apart by corruption, Julius Caesar was not meant to be king. Rome had no kings. However, he wanted power, and he took it for himself. He climbed the ranks using clever words and strong alliances. He made friends and defeated enemies. His ambition was greater than the laws meant to limit him. In the end, it was not an enemy army that defeated him, but the ones he once called friends. Power in Rome belonged to those who knew how to seize it. And though Julius Caesar was not the wealthiest, nor was he from the most powerful family, he had something far more valuable. He had the charm, intelligence, and an instinct for survival. He observed how people rose and fell in politics. He realized that success in the Republic wasn't just about talent, it was about connections. To rule Rome, he had to understand the system. Caesar's first step was to win the people's support. He spent a lot of money, hosted big events, and spoke in ways that made common citizens feel connected to him. The Senate didn't trust him, but they underestimated his plan. They thought he was just another ambitious politician making empty promises. But Caesar was thinking long-term. He quickly moved up the political ladder and gained power and influence. As a military tribune, he built strong ties with soldiers. As a quaestor, he learned about administration. He became governor of Hispania Ulterior and won battles that made his name known. However, he still wanted more. He wanted to conquer Rome. To strengthen his position, he needed strong allies. He reached out to two of the most powerful men in Rome, Pompey the Great and Marcus Crassus. Pompey was a celebrated general, but the Senate often ignored his requests. Crassus was the richest man but wanted more respect. Caesar saw an opportunity and persuaded them that together they could achieve great things that none could do alone. The first triumvirate was a secret deal between three powerful men. They wanted to control Rome, and they did it by using their influence in politics. In 59 BCE, Julius Caesar became consul. He used this position to make changes that helped regular people and his friends. He gave land to the poor, lowered debts, and built a strong support system. The Senate did not like these changes, but they were powerless to stop him. As time went on, tensions increased. Many senators saw Caesar as a threat. They thought he would try to take complete control. They waited for a chance to stop him. But before they could act, Caesar had other plans. He was getting ready for a military campaign that would turn him into a legend. Rome's borders were always expanding, but beyond them lay lands full of warriors who refused to bow. Gaul, a vast region covering modern-day France and Belgium, was home to fierce tribes that had long been a threat. Rome wanted control, and Caesar saw an opportunity. Not just for victory, but for glory. In 58 BCE, with an army at his command, he marched into Gaul. The tribes were divided, often fighting each other, and Caesar used this to his advantage. He played one tribe against another, offering alliances to some while crushing others. He won battle after battle, proving not just his courage but his ability to outthink his enemies. Then came Alesia, the battle that would define him. In 52 BCE, the Gallic leader Vercingetorix united the tribes against Rome. Caesar and his legions found themselves outnumbered, surrounded in a siege that could have been their end. But Caesar was no ordinary general. He ordered the construction of two massive walls, one to keep the Gauls inside Alesia and another to keep reinforcements out. His men fought hunger, exhaustion, and constant attacks, but they held on. When the final assault came, it was the Gauls who broke first. Vercingetorix surrendered, and with that, Gaul was Rome's. Caesar wrote about these battles in his Commentarii de Bello Gallico, a first-hand account that painted him as a hero. He described his victories in simple, clear words, meant not just for scholars but for the people of Rome. They read about his triumphs and saw him as a man who could do the impossible. But not everyone celebrated his success. His victories made him too popular, too powerful. In the Senate, his enemies whispered. If Caesar returned to Rome, they feared he would take control by force. They needed to stop him. And soon, he would give them the excuse they needed. The alliance that had once ruled Rome was falling apart. Crassus had died in battle, and Pompey, once Caesar's ally, had become his greatest rival. The Senate, fearing Caesar's power, sided with Pompey and ordered Caesar to disband his army. He was given a choice: to return as a private citizen and risk arrest, or march on Rome as a traitor. In 49 BCE, he made his decision. Standing at the banks of the Rubicon River, the border of his province, he uttered the famous words, "Alia acta est," the die is cast. Then, with his army behind him, he crossed into Italy, knowing there was no turning back. Pompey and the Senate fled, gathering their forces in Greece. Caesar wasted no time. He moved swiftly, securing Rome without bloodshed before chasing Pompey across the empire. Their final battle came at Pharsalus in 48 BCE. Pompey had more soldiers, but Caesar had something greater. He had the experience, discipline, and the loyalty of men who had fought beside him for years. When the dust settled, Pompey's army was shattered. He fled to Egypt, hoping for safety, but was betrayed and assassinated by Pharaoh Ptolemy XIII. With Pompey gone, no one stood in Caesar's way. He returned to Rome not as a victorious general, but as its most powerful man. He had defeated his enemies, conquered new lands, and reshaped the Republic itself. But Rome was a city that had always feared kings, and Caesar was beginning to look a lot like one. His story was not over. The war was won, but peace would not last. Power had been his goal from the start, but in Rome, absolute power often came with a price. And soon, he would learn that not even the greatest conqueror could escape his fate. Julius Caesar got to the peak of his power. Instead of calling himself king, which was not allowed in Rome, he chose the title dictator for life. This title demonstrated the fact that he had complete control and did not answer to anyone. The Senate was still there, but it had lost its strength. The Republic was no longer a place for discussion and compromise. Now, Caesar made all the decisions about Rome's future by himself. But Caesar wanted more than just power. He wanted to make Rome greater. He saw that the Republic had many problems. There was corruption, inefficiency, and a big gap between the rich and the poor. Even though he came from a wealthy family, he knew that Rome's true strength was its people. So, he created bold reforms to improve their lives. He gave citizenship to people outside of Italy. This meant that those once seen as outsiders could now be Romans. He helped people by reducing debts and redistributing land. He also gave property to his soldiers to make sure they stayed loyal to him. He expanded the Senate with his supporters. This way, even a weakened Senate was filled with people who owed him everything. The old patrician families, who had ruled for generations, noticed these changes. Caesar was not just changing laws, he was changing who had power in Rome. One of his biggest changes was to the calendar. The Roman calendar was confusing and didn't match the seasons. This caused problems for harvests and festivals. Caesar introduced the Julian calendar. It was based on the solar year and was precise and organized. This calendar showed what he believed Rome could be: structured, efficient, and lasting. With each reform, Caesar's power increased. He became more than a military leader or politician, he became Rome itself. Statues of him were built, his face appeared on coins, and living rulers were treated like gods. However, not everyone thought this was good. The Senate saw him not as a leader but as a threat. Rome had spent centuries avoiding kings, and now they saw one rising before their eyes. The title dictator for life gave a public declaration that the Republic was over. The whispers began, first in dark corners and private meetings, then in open conversations. If Caesar would not step down, if he would not restore the Republic, then there was only one solution left. The Senate had turned against him before, but this time, they would not fight him on the battlefield. They would not challenge him with armies. They would not declare war. Instead, they would do what Romans had done for centuries when a leader grew too powerful. They would remove him. It began as a quiet conspiracy, formed among some of Julius Caesar's former allies. Marcus Junius Brutus, who Caesar trusted, and Gaius Cassius Longinus, who was his rival, led the plan. Other senators joined them. They felt their power was fading, and they thought they were saving Rome from a dictator. They believed they were not traitors, but heroes. But they faced a big challenge. How do you kill the most powerful man in the world? Caesar had survived many battles and commanded loyal legions. The conspirators needed to find a time when he would be weak and surrounded by people he trusted. They picked the Ides of March, which is March 15th, 44 BCE. On that day, Caesar was set to attend a Senate meeting. There would be no soldiers there, just him and the senators who had vowed to serve Rome. Warnings came to Caesar, but he did not listen. A soothsayer warned him to beware the Ides of March, but he laughed it off. His wife, Calpurnia, had disturbing dreams about his death, but he brushed aside her fears. Even when rumors of a plot spread, he did not believe that the men he had forgiven and promoted would betray him. He arrived at the theater of Pompey, where the Senate was meeting. The room was filled with familiar faces, senators, friends, allies. But as he took his seat, the mood shifted. A senator approached, like he was trying to make a request. Then another. And another. They surrounded him. Then came the first strike. A dagger pierced his body, followed by another, and another. The room erupted into chaos as more senators joined in. Some wounds were deep, others shallow. But they all passed the same message. Rome would not be ruled by a king. And then came Brutus. Caesar, bleeding, turned to see a man he had trusted above all others. The sight of Brutus among the assassins was the final blow. According to legend, his last words were "Et tu, Brute," meaning "you too, Brutus." But whether he said these words or not, the betrayal was real. By the time it was over, he was stabbed 23 times. After the attack, he fell at the base of a statue. This statue was of Pompey, the rival he had beaten. His blood stained the Senate floor. For a moment, silence filled the room. The most powerful man in Rome was dead. The conspirators thought they had saved the Republic. They believed the people would celebrate and that Rome would be free again. But they made a big mistake. Caesar was not just a man, he was an idea. Ideas do not die easily. News spread quickly, and the streets filled with sorrow. The people did not see heroes, they saw assassins who had killed their champion. The senators who wanted to restore the Republic were now in danger. Brutus and Cassius, once admired leaders, became fugitives. They had to run as Caesar's supporters took control. His adopted son, Octavian, and his loyal general, Mark Antony, would soon seek revenge. The Republic they tried to save would never come back. Instead, from the ruins of Caesar's death, an empire would rise. Julius Caesar fell, but his death did not restore the Republic. Instead, it did the very thing his assassins had feared. It paved the way for something even greater. His murder was meant to save Rome from a dictator, but all it did was ignite another civil war, one that would end with the Republic itself in ruins. The city did not rejoice. Instead, it fell into chaos. Mark Antony, Caesar's most trusted general, immediately turned public opinion against the assassins. During Caesar's funeral, he stood before the people and read the dictator's will. In it, Caesar had left a large sum of money to the citizens of Rome. He had also granted land to his soldiers. It meant one thing. Caesar had died thinking of Rome's people, not himself. The crowd turned into an angry mob, forcing Brutus, Cassius, and the other conspirators to flee. Antony was not the only one who could claim Caesar's legacy. Caesar named an heir in his will. This heir was Gaius Octavius, his 18-year-old grandnephew, whom he adopted as his son before his death. Octavian, as he was now called, was young and inexperienced. However, he was also patient and ruthless. Most importantly, he carried Caesar's name. At first, Antony and Octavian worked together. They teamed up to hunt down Caesar's killers. They formed the Second Triumvirate with Marcus Lepidus. Together, they went to war against Brutus and Cassius. In 42 BCE, they fought at the Battle of Philippi. The last defenders of the Republic were defeated. Brutus and Cassius both killed themselves. The men who claimed to be liberators of Rome were gone, and Caesar's avengers won. However, Antony and Octavian's alliance did not last. Soon, Rome was at war again. This time, it was between two men fighting for power. Antony joined forces with Cleopatra, the Queen of Egypt. Octavian, on the other hand, painted Antony as a traitor who had abandoned Rome. In 31 BCE, at the Battle of Actium, Octavian's fleet defeated Antony and Cleopatra's forces. The defeated lovers fled to Egypt and took their own lives. With Antony dead, no one could challenge Octavian. The Republic, once ruled by the Senate, was gone. In 27 BCE, Octavian took a new title, Augustus, which means the revered one. He did not call himself a king, but he acted like one. He controlled the military, the government, and the laws. Rome was no longer a republic. It had become an empire, ruled by one man, just like Caesar had dreamed. In the East, Byzantine rulers called themselves Caesar, which is the Greek word for Caesar. In the West, German kings used the title Kaiser. In Russia, rulers were known as Tsars. All these titles come from Caesar's name. Even after nearly 2,000 years, leaders wanted to connect themselves to his legacy. Caesar's influence went beyond politics. His military strategies changed how wars were fought. He used rapid movements on the battlefield and psychological tactics to win. His writings, called Commentarii de Bello Gallico, were studied for many years. They taught leaders and historians about the mind of a conqueror. The calendar he reformed, known as the Julian calendar, was used for over 1,600 years. It was later adjusted into the calendar we use today. This is the story of a man who wanted to create something amazing. He worked hard to build his dream. However, some people were scared of what he was making. They tried to stop him, but he didn't give up. In the end, history remembers him as a great leader. People see him as a hero, not as a villain. His legacy still inspires many around the world today. But the question is, was Julius Caesar truly the hero who reshaped Rome, or was he the very reason the Republic fell? Perhaps the truth is both. But what are your thoughts concerning this? Kindly share with us in the comments. Like, share and subscribe to this channel to enjoy informative contents like this. We'll see you in the next video.